DangoteRefinery has received the 950,000 barrels cargo of Agbami crude grade from Shell International Trade and Shipping Company Limited. According to the tanker tracking data, S&P Global, this indicates that fuel production at the $19 billion facility is finally set to start after years of delays. While this news has generated positive reactions, there are concerns about the impact of theft and pipeline vandalism on the nation's oil and gas sector. Yes, it's a two-in-one conversation, but let's get this and put in perspective. And I'm being joined by an energy analyst and a lawyer, Dr. Ayodele Oni. Thank you so much, Dr. Oni. Compliments of the season, and it's good to see you.
Same here. Wish you same. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. I know we had this conversation before now, and I think you said it, that it will get to production before the end of the year. To me, it's quite... how do I put it? We expect the Port Harcourt Refinery. We are counting days for that too to come on stream. And DangoteRefinery too has received shipment already. So how does all of this come to you? It's like a new dawn for the oil and gas industry in Nigeria.
It really is. It's positive news. I've always said that you don't want to rely on your base resources. You want to always add value. And value addition to a base resource is refining. It's processing. That's why countries will sell cocoa and buy back chocolate. For example, you want to sell crude shipment, say you make $1 billion and end up buying back petroleum products at 1 billion and say $300 million. You're on a deficit when it comes to balance of trade and balance of payment. So that's positive for me. Another reason why it's positive is if you take data or statistics, the largest amount we spent in the last quarter importing items was on PMS, what we call petrol colloquially. I think we spent 1.92 trillion, very close to 2 trillion on just that, naira, on just bringing in petroleum products. And gas oil, we did about 782 billion naira. So you can imagine all of that staying in our economy. That's positive.
I'm interested in that angle before we move forward. The impact on our FX, that pressure on the FX has been something we've had to contend with for a while. So do you see this? We're going to heave a sigh of relief if we really ramp up production. I'm talking about refining and all of that in country.
Well, I think marginally. I do not think that it's just about bringing in petroleum products. It's all sorts. It's even also around how can the government ensure that its resources are sold officially, mining is not done unofficially, and sale of our resources are not done officially. But it will play a role now that we refine locally. It will play a role, but we still need to understand a bit around the dynamics. How he's going to sell. He's going to sell in naira. He's going to probably buy his crude still in USD. Crude is an international commodity. But that said, because it will go to reducing how much expenditure we make in USD, particularly when it comes to finished products, I think it will play a role. I do not think it will be necessarily a huge role, but marginally at least. So I think that's a positive for us, that it reduces capital flight and ensures that some of our USD does stay in country, or if it's spent in country.
Let's move on and now talking about the movement of crude. Some say they expect the NNPC to maybe supply to Dangote, maybe at a subsidized rate for us to be able to get maybe PMS lesser or that. But really, do you see is there any way we could run this transaction that it could help impact the final landing cost of PMS? Nigerians are concerned about that. 600, 650, 625 naira in some cases, and are thinking that if these refineries come on stream, that might change.
Okay, well, I do not think that will change substantially, and I'll tell you why. You would buy in USD. I doubt that the NNPC will want to sell at a discount. Remember that the NNPC is now being properly commercialized. It's become a company set up under the Companies and Allied Metals Act, and it's supposed to generate revenues. It's supposed to make profit. And for a long time, there are reports that it has not made the profit it ought to make because of subsidy. Now that you've removed subsidy and we're ensuring, and one of the conditions for even Labour saying subsidy should be removed is for us to refine locally. Now, if we refine locally, it then does a few things. One, jobs that we used to provide offshore to refineries offshore, we will now be doing that locally. Multiplier effect in relation to jobs. Also, if you look at certain costs like haulage, ship to ship, insurance, freight, some of those costs probably go as high as 20, 22, 23% of what will be the landing cost. So all of those should be out, or a substantial part of it. So that should impact the price, generally speaking. Now, one thing I'm not sure of is that we currently have full subsidy. Because if we do have full subsidy, I expect that the price will be probably closer to 1,000 than 600. Maybe government has just decided to subsidize a bit for a while to keep people happy. Because if we're paying full subsidy, I think the prices will be higher than what they currently are. That said, I mean, if we refine sufficiently locally, it should impact prices marginally. I don't think it will impact prices substantially because the base product, which is crude, will still be bought at the USD value because the government still does want to, and the country still does want to generate revenue, generally speaking. So yes, prices will be impacted marginally, but I don't think they will be impacted substantially. Maybe over time, competition, people find other sources, he finds other ways to structure his deals to make the crude in itself cheaper, then prices may then go down. But of course, security of supply is a positive thing, that said.
Well, we also expect other of these refineries, like I mentioned, the Port Harcourt refinery is expected to also come on stream anytime soon, and that would also start production. The start of this Dangote refinery, we hear will have the likes of aviation fuel, the likes of, before we now start to produce PMS and condensates and all of that. So what impact, now let me ask, will this have or on the entire industry now, talking about productivity? We've seen many of these refineries just not producing anything, billions of naira being spent year in, year out. So what do you think will change around this when it becomes totally functional?
Okay, so, when prices go down, and if you check statistics and data, you'd see that companies spend upwards of 40% of their running cost on self-generation. Now, if they do that, it then means that if the cost of fueling, which is a substantial part of the expenditure, particularly OPEX for self-generation, goes down because there's competition, there's more refining locally, it would impact the prices of goods and services. And then employers will be able to use such extra funds to be more productive, to invest in research and development, maybe even hire people, more people, maybe even increase people's pay. So I think all of these sort of events have positive multiplier effects on the economy, generally speaking. And diesel, yes, I know they'll start with diesel and all of those before they then get to PMS. I think the diesel, once you take PMS out, diesel is probably the next most important petroleum product. And that being the case, if we refine sufficiently here, then the prices should go down marginally, like I stated. But a marginal reduction is still a reduction, and it's still a positive, And because of those other positives, like keeping jobs in the country and those sort of things, it would always be a good thing to have. And the multiplier effect, indirect jobs, and all of those sort of things are always very positive. And the fact that we've become productive is positive. We're now adding value locally to our own resources and not just selling base resources, buying back more expensive finished products. And that itself, it's even a psychological comfort, It does give some measure of comfort and satisfaction.
Now, it takes me now to oil theft, which is becoming more worrisome by the day. We got reports earlier this week, pipelines being ruptured and all of that. And many will say that this is actually impacting us negatively when we are supposed to ramp up production. some people are there getting to attack these pipelines, and we get to lose crude almost on daily basis. What do you take? What's your take on this and all efforts being made by NNPCL, by the ministry, and of course the federal government, the Security Advisor's Office, to address this ugly trend?
Well, I think that it's a sad situation where you see government putting in a lot of efforts to move a sector forward, and individuals decide to then sabotage. I think that all of these efforts, will yield result. I think that at times maybe people need to be better sensitized to understand the dangers and ultimately the adverse effect on the economy. Many times when we criticize the country, we criticize governance, we need to understand that we at times have a role to play in terms of reporting, in terms of not even getting involved in some of these things. Because I think I was checking something from NAIT, and I understand that in the last 5 years, we've probably lost 4.3 trillion from damaging pipelines. So maybe if people better understand the implications of some of these things, it will change. And I guess also the overall economy. And government then also needs to do more around technology, stuff like SCADA that can remotely detect some of these things, and if the repairs can be made quickly. And I'm believing that as a country to also implement the host communities trust arrangement introduced by the Petroleum Industry Act, all of this will be a thing of the past. I think personally it's not been as bad as it was 2-3 years ago. I think the situation is improved, but I think government shouldn't rest on its oars.
So moving forward, do you think that we can meet our OPEC quota if we are to follow what we have on ground? Are we likely to meet up?
That's a tough question. I would guess that if we don't meet up, we'll be very close. Because more recently, we've almost even produced slightly above our quota very recently. So I think if we don't, we will be close. That's my guess.
What other global issues do you think might affect pricing of crude moving on in 2023 as we wrap up?
So many disputes. If we continue to have disputes, we will have this. If we have another phase of COVID or something similar, then we will continue to have high prices. If Russia and Ukraine don't get their acts together, if anyone else joins them, particularly around the Gulf region, then prices will remain relatively high. That's my guess. If any of those events, crude prices are determined even by information you get. So very sensitive. Once there's any sensitive information, even rumors can lead to those. So any of those situations can lead to prices remaining high, relatively high, in the 80s, 70s maybe.
Well, all interesting game there. But before I let you go, we've talked about modular refineries to help support some of these major refineries like the Port Harcourt Refinery and the Dangote Refinery that we've been talking about. But what is the capacity really, or what capacity do you think the modular refineries, what can they accommodate? How can they help bridge this gap one way or the other? Maybe they could come together and come up with something more reasonable than what they do at the moment. What do you think about them generally?
Okay, so the challenge with modular refineries is that with respect to PMS in particular, what we call petrol, they cannot produce petrol, generally speaking. I mean, I wouldn't want to speak in absolute terms.
Okay.
The reason why they cannot is that there's an equipment that you need to add to your modular refinery to then be able to move from, I think, naphtha to then produce PMS. If you don't have that equipment, you can't do it. Now, to have that equipment, it's very expensive, such that over the lifespan or life cycle of your plant, you may not be able to break even. So because of that, no one buys that equipment because of its cost. So that already makes the issues around whether they can have a substantial impact around PMS almost a no-no. But with respect to diesel and all of that, it's always the more merrier, so that you can then become a net exporter of petroleum products. That's what we want to become in the country. Sell to the countries around us, many of whom do not even have crude. So if we have the market flooded, then we will be able to, people become more creative and be able to even also export internationally. I think that would be a best case scenario for me. And that's outside of PMS anyway. So with Dangote alone, we'll meet and surpass our demand. With a Port Harcourt and with the modular guys, we can then become a net exporter. The world still need petroleum products, despite the energy transition we are faced with. At least for the next 10, 20 years, we'll still speak a lot around crude and gas, more importantly, natural gas.
So finally, one way or the other, players in the oil and gas industry would agree that, of course, in-country refining would get on, no matter what it is. President Bola Tinubu's administration is kicking this off, and it seems like a step in the right direction. You agree with me?
Yes, I do. I agree with you.
I must thank you so much.
In terms of energy policy and pushing for success around gas and all of that, there's a lot going on, and I'm quite impressed.
Wow. Thank you so much, Engineer Dr. Ayodele Oni. Thank you so much for your time. Energy analyst, lawyer, is also a writer. Thank you so much. It's really good to have you on the program as usual.